Hi, I'm Daniel Andrews, owner and creator of the DAN Show, and welcome to my breakdown of the Tennessee Titans. Now, if you're new to my channel, I've got one simple question to ask you. Do you want to talk football? Because if so, you're in the right place. There's this button right around here. See it? See it? See it? Bam! Hit that button. Become one of the greatest people on planet Earth. Now, here's how my breakdown of the Tennessee Titans is going to go. I'm going to talk about what I like about the Titans. Then I want to talk about what I don't like about the Titans, but stick around to the very end where I break down the Vegas over-under and if I'm going to put action down on the Titans. So, hey, let's kick this off and let's get started on what I like about Tennessee Titans. Let's start off with the 2019 playoff run. This was really nothing short of amazing. Now, keep in mind the Titans were 2-4. They benched their quarterback. Then they go to 8-5 and are in really good shape, but they lose the next two games. So they're 8-7, and they play the Houston Texans in Houston in order to make the playoffs. Now, keep in mind, Houston Texans already clinched the division, clinched home field game, so they are just going to play backups, rest a lot of their starters, but you still had to win that game. So you go ahead and you win that game. Then you go to New England. And let's face it, it's not easy to win a playoff game there. I think New England's gone to every single AFC championship since 1941. It's a long streak. I want to say it's like something like 6-7 years they've been to AFC championship games. So for them to play a wild card game in New England, it was a little strange. But yeah, they lost that game. That was a huge win. Kudos for the Tennessee Titans. You had a successful year. You're 8-7 with a backup quarterback. You make the playoffs and you beat New England. You do nothing else. You had a successful year. Well, they go to Baltimore, which had the best record in the NFL, 14-2 team. You're a 9-7 team that barely made the playoffs. You had no chance to win this game. Wrong. You win that game. And then you go to Kansas City and you lose the AFC Championship game. There's no shame in that. You're a 9-7 team. And here's the thing with the AFC last year. There was really the haves and the have-nots, okay? Buffalo wasn't as good as Baltimore, Kansas City. Even Bills fans knew that they were not going to beat New England, Kansas City, or Baltimore in the playoffs. They knew that. Houston Texans fans realistically knew that even though they beat Kansas City in the regular season, they weren't going to beat them in the playoffs. They weren't as good as New England or Baltimore. And then Tennessee, who barely got in, they were thinking, hey, you know what? Hey, we're happy to be here. Let's put on a good show. Well, they put on a great show because the three teams in the AFC you had to worry about were New England, Kansas City, and Baltimore. And you beat 2 out of 3 of them. You lose the AFC Championship game, but your season was a success. This is a season people are going to talk about for a long time. That 3-game stretch was one of the most impressive 3-game stretches in the history of the NFL. Mainly because of the second reason, the second thing I like about the Tennessee Titans, that's Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry, I've been a football fan for about 40 years, and I can't think of a more impressive 3-game stretch than what I saw of Derrick Henry. First playing against the Houston Texans, he had 32 carries for 211 yards and 3 touchdowns to win the rushing title, but also get Houston into the playoffs. Then against the New England Patriots, which had the number 1 scoring defense in the NFL, 34 carries, 182 yards, a touchdown, plus 1 reception for 22 yards, giving him over 200 total yards, 204 to be exact. And then he goes against the Baltimore Ravens, 3rd best scoring defense in the NFL, 30 carries, 195 yards, plus 2 receptions for 7 yards. So for 3 consecutive games, over 200 total yards. And it's kind of funny, he ended up having, I forgot to get his catches in the Houston game. Doesn't even matter, but bottom line, here's what's more impressive about those 2 playoff games. Tannehill, 8 out of 15 for 72 yards against Patriots. That's okay because he really lit it up against the Ravens. 7 out of 14 for 88 yards. 2 playoff games, 160 yards. Derrick Henry had more than 160 rushing yards in those 2 games. By the way, the Titans have never lost a game. They are perfect 13-0 when Derrick Henry rushes for over 100 yards. That's 10 regular season games, 3 postseason games. That 3-game stretch like I said, was probably the most impressive stretch I've ever seen out of any running back ever. I mean, here you are, it's funny, the last video I did about Lamar Jackson, I said, you got to come through in the playoffs. Well, in the playoffs, the guy comes up with back-to-back 200 total yards against the number 1 and the number 3 scoring defense, a team that you're a massive underdog against. Doesn't matter if they lose an AFC championship game. They're a team that was 8-7 and was looking at not even making the playoffs. So kudos to Derrick Henry for doing something people are going to remember for a very, very, very long time. Third thing I like about the Titans is the draft. Now, this is interesting because I gave the Titans draft grade a B, and the reason why is they had 6 total draft picks, including 2 7th and a late 5th round pick. But their first 3 picks are very impressive. Isaiah Wilson, who I had a 2nd round grade on, I love going to Tennessee because he's a right tackle. He's a massive road grader. For any other team, I would have said this is a reach in the first round, but not Tennessee because you rely on Derrick Henry so much, so you need a massive road grader. Jack Conklin, your right tackle last year, was signed to a 3-year, $42 million contract in Cleveland. There's not too many right tackles that make $14 million a year, so replacing him with Isaiah Wilson, a guy who's much bigger and maybe a better run blocker, definitely not better pass blocker, but if you watch Georgia at all and you've seen all the great running backs, partly because they have a great offensive line there in Georgia, I love that pick. Kristen Fulton, who I would have bet money was going to go in the first round, get him late in the second. He's a plug-and-play guy. So in this draft, you get 2 plug-and-play guys, then you get Darrington Evans, Appalachian State, a running back. Now, I had him between the 3rd and the 4th round grade. You get him late in the 3rd. The draft value is about the same, but for Tennessee, this is important because you got a big back like Derrick Henry. Darrington Evans is the polar opposite. He's smaller, he's quicker, he's faster. Ideally, he touches the ball about 150 to 200 times in 2020, just to spell Derrick Henry. Ideally, he doesn't touch the ball more than 15 times in a game, and that's all you really need. You kind of want him to spell Derrick Henry. He's a complementary piece, but he's also somebody that helps keep Derrick Henry healthy because, bottom line, you don't have Derrick Henry, you don't have a team, you don't have that great 3-game stretch. So really, really good draft. Cole McDonald in the 7th round, the quarterback out of Hawaii. Don't be surprised he ends up being a backup because in this type of offense, Cole McDonald could come in and be the backup. It's a pretty basic offense for the most part. So now keep in mind, I think Tannehill played really good. I mean, I'm not saying anything against him, but it's a 7th round pick who might end up being the backup quarterback. So that's a pretty good draft. 4th and final thing, and I debated about throwing this in there or not, but hey, it's my channel and I want to talk about the guy. I had a huge draft crush and he's one of my favorite players, and that's Harold Landry. Now, he didn't make the NFL top 100. He's not a Pro Bowl player, but he did lead the team with 9 sacks. And this is a player going into his 3rd year, and I think he's going to have a huge year. If you haven't watched Tennessee Titans, you probably don't know who this kid is, but you will know who this kid after 2020. He's going to make the Pro Bowl. He's going to hit over double digits. He's going to have a huge year. He's one of my favorite players. So, hey, I felt like talking about him. It's my show. So I like Harold Landry. He's going to have a big year. So just to recap what I like about Tennessee Titans, the 2019 playoff run, how they ended the season, it was nothing short of miraculous. People are going to talk about it for a long time. Derrick Henry led the NFL in rushing, had that 3-game stretch of over 200 yards for 3 consecutive games, 2 playoff games against the number 1 scoring defense and the number 3 scoring defense. People will remember that for a very long time. They had a really good draft. Not a great draft, but you only had 6 players, including 2 7ths and a late 5th. So, yeah, it can't be great, but they got 2 plug-and-play players, a guy to complement Derrick Henry, and a potential backup quarterback. And then one of my favorite defensive players, a guy who's going to make the NFL top 100 next year and have double digits in sacks, Harold Landry. So now let's talk about what I don't like about Tennessee Titans. The first thing I'm going to talk about with the Tennessee Titans is Dean Pease. He's the defensive coordinator. He retired after the season. And keep in mind, this is a guy who helped. The Titans didn't have a great defense, but in those 2 playoff victories, they held the New England Patriots to 13 points, and then the Baltimore Ravens, who led the NFL in scoring, to 12 points. In 2 playoff games, you held those two teams to 25 points. Yeah, you gave up 35 to Kansas City, but lots of teams gave up over 30 to Kansas City, so that's nothing to be ashamed of. But bottom line, Mike Vrabel, it's only his second year as head coach. He's a very inexperienced head coach. So losing a defensive coordinator who's been in the NFL as long as Dean Pease is a major blow. As of right now, the Tennessee Titans don't even have a defensive coordinator named. More than likely, Vrabel, who's a former defensive coordinator, is going to take over defensive coordinator duties, but you lose a wealth of experience in the Tennessee organization. And bottom line, you had a defensive coordinator who helped keep those the Patriots offense wasn't explosive, but you had Tom Brady. Tom Brady's last game in New England, you held him to 13 points, and then the Baltimore Ravens, number one scoring offense, again, you only held them to 12. So it's going to be a blow. How much of a blow is hard to say, but anytime you use an experienced defensive coordinator, you don't really have a replacement. It's going to hurt. Keep in mind, Vrabel, if he does do double duty, he didn't do it last year, so it's something you got to keep an eye out on. Second thing I don't like, and it's kind of weird because I'm going to talk about both sides of my mouth here, is Tannehill, specifically Tannehill hype. I thought when I made a video with the Titans in 2019, I actually thought Tannehill might be a better athlete than Mariota. And when I say athlete, is he as fast? No, but I think he might have a bigger arm. He's a big dude. He's got a big arm. He's never been a natural passer, but without Tannehill, they don't go to the playoffs. Plain simple, they were 2-4. They put Tannehill in. They were at one point they were 8-5, and it looked like they were in good shape because remember they did beat Kansas City, so there was a possibility they could have even at one point in time, even though it was a long shot, there was one point in time of them even in the hunt for a bye, but they lost 2 straight. So anyway. PFF called Ryan Tannehill their number one quarterback last year, or their number one rated quarterback. And by the way, PFF's an absolute joke. And if somebody's going to say, hey, you know more about football than PFF, I'm going to say, you take my knowledge, you can go to the casino and you can win money. You take PFF to the casino, you're not going to win shit. So yeah, I know more than PFF about football. I put my knowledge against PFF, I will win you more money than PFF. That is a fact. That is a guarantee. So is it an interesting tool to use? If you want to use it, great. But if they're telling you Ryan Tannehill's the best quarterback in football, go ahead. Believe them. Go ahead. Bet on Tannehill over Mahomes. Go ahead. Do it. I am a big anti-PFF guy. I like what Tannehill brought to the team, but here's a guy in 2 playoff victories, threw for a combined 160 passing yards. I liked what Tannehill did last year, and I thought it was smart to sign him to an extension, give him a good contract, make him the starting quarterback. But you're building a team around Derrick Henry, not Ryan Tannehill, which leads me to the third thing I don't like about the Tennessee Titans. That's Derrick Henry's health. Bottom line, he's been in the NFL 4 years now. He's never played a full season. His first 2 years, he started 4 games. Started 12 games. Did get 1,000 yards in 2018. And in 2019, remember the second to the last game of the season against the Saints, a game that they really needed to win, he was injured. They took him out. Now, maybe they took him out because they're like, hey, we need you healthy for a playoff race. Maybe we're just putting some ice on him. I don't know the whole deal, but I know he didn't play, and they needed a win. Anytime you got a big running back, the shelf life's much shorter. I mean, and Tennessee Titans or Houston Oilers fans know this. I mean, look at Earl Campbell. His first 3 seasons were as good as any 3 seasons in NFL history. You know, it might be the best starting 3 seasons of any running back of all time. Then he just hit the wall. Was never the same guy. Eddie George had 5 great seasons. That last season, he had over 400 carries, led the team to the Super Bowl, one of the best Super Bowls of all time. And just hit a wall. I think the next season he did have 1,000 yards. It was like on 350 carries. He had like, it was like 3 yards carry. It's really bad, but here's a guy. By the way, you want to do something fun? Look up Derrick Henry's high school stats. I'm going to give you this: 1,397 carries, 12,124 yards, 153 touchdowns. And in Alabama, he had 602 carries for 3,591 yards, 42 touchdowns, including his Heisman year. First SEC running back to eclipse 2,000 yards. He had 395 carries, 2,219 yards, 28 touchdowns. And that's before he stepped on an NFL field. Now, am I going to tell you that 1,400 high school carries is going to damage him for life? Probably not. But I also know that you can't have 2,000 carries before you hit the NFL and say that you have to be worried, then say like there's no worried about tread. Here's a guy who hasn't played a full season in 4 years. This team revolves around Derrick Henry, and the shelf life for big running backs is short. And this is a guy who hasn't been able to stay healthy in any NFL season, but yet this team is completely wrapped around him. All right, are you going to tell me that Tannehill's going to win a game? You don't throw for 160 yards in 2 playoff victories and say that you're going to rely on the passing game. No, you rely on Derrick Henry, who's never been able to stay healthy and going into his 5th year. Here's the deal. If he's healthy during playoff time, you're in good shape. He plays 12 games at about 90 to 100%, you're in good shape. As long as he's healthy for the playoffs. Derrick Henry's not healthy for the playoffs, you're in a world of hurt. And that has to worry you. So just kind of recap the 3 things I don't like about Tennessee Titans. Dean Pease retirement, the experience, the knowledge, you're going to miss that. The Tannehill hype, bottom line, I'm really kind of referring to more to PFF calling him the number 1 quarterback last year. It's just a complete joke. PFF's a joke. But bottom line, you have to understand something with Tannehill. He adds something to this offense, but he's not going to win a game if he has to go back and throw the ball 50, 60 times a game. He's not going to win a game by himself. You need Derrick Henry, which is the 3rd thing. And I worry about his health and then the shelf life of Derrick Henry. So, hey, what I say, stick around to the very end where I talk about the Vegas over and under. And if I'm going to put action down on the Tennessee Titans, the over-under is 8.5. And of all the teams I've done, this is the biggest difference. And this is a high number. The over is negative 140, so you have to wager $140 to win 100, or the under is plus 120. So you wager $100, you will win 120. Because this is the largest disparity, did I get that word right? I think it's going to jump up to 9. I really do. And so I think by the time I head up to Iowa, I'm probably going to do my betting in Iowa. There is a small chance I will run out to Vegas, but I don't see it, at least not this year. I don't like flying to begin with, and with everything that's been going on, I'll probably just travel to Iowa and do that. But I really think this number is going to jump to 9. I firmly believe it, and I do like the over, even at 9, but I'm not going to put action on the Titans. The reason why I like the over is the schedule. They have a bye week 7, but here's your first 4 games. The schedule makers really did you a favor here. At Denver, Jacksonville at home, and at Minnesota. Denver, to be honest with you, I think is a coin flip. But you're probably going to beat Jacksonville at home. You're probably going to lose to Minnesota on the road. Your next 3 games before the bye are all at home. Pittsburgh, Buffalo, and Houston. They're 3 tough opponents, but I think you can win 2. Okay? Bottom line, going into the bye, you're either going to be 3-3, 4-2, or 5-1. After the bye, you travel to Cincinnati. Very winnable game. Your next 2 games are at home against Chicago and Indianapolis. More than likely, you're going to split that. All right? So I got you to 9 games. And you're probably at worst going to be 5-4. You could be 7-2. So you're anywhere from 5 to 7 wins right there. Now, the next two games at Baltimore, at Indianapolis is tough. But you get a nice 3-game stretch in December. Home against Cleveland, at Jacksonville, home against Detroit. You worst case scenario, you're going to win 2 of those. You finish the season at Green Bay and at Houston. But I got you worst case scenario 7. I mean, you could easily be 9. And here's the thing, a healthy Derrick Henry, a good defense, you can win anywhere. That's a recipe to win on the road. The home games are pretty solid. I mean, you have some tough ones, but you also got, a road game at Cincinnati. I mean, Detroit at home, of course, that should be a win. Even if this doesn't jump up, let's say it jumps up to 9. So you're banking on the Titans, whether it's 8.5 or 9. You're banking on the Titans just to go 8-8. Really? I mean, if Derrick Henry's out, even without Derrick Henry, this team can still win 7 games pretty easily. So I'm not putting action. I definitely would not take negative 140. That's a terrible number. But here's what's going to happen. This is going to jump up to 9. Then I'm going to take a look at the number. Then I'm going to go ahead and talk to you guys about it. But ultimately, I'm avoiding the Tennessee Titans. I am not going to put action on them at all. I already said this earlier, but I'm going to say it again. Out of the AFC South, I like Houston Texans to win the division. So I'm sorry, Titans fans, but I like a lot of what Tennessee's doing. I got a lot of question marks about them. I don't think that they're ready to go to the next level. It wouldn't surprise me if they regressed and won 10 games instead of 9. It also wouldn't surprise me if they improve and go to 11 and 12 games, but even if they do, everything goes their way and they win 11 or 12 games, they're not ready to go to a Super Bowl. They're not as good as Baltimore, and they're not as good as Kansas City. Yes, I know they beat Baltimore, but as I said in my video when I broke down the Ravens, they play a best of 3. Baltimore wins. So kudos to the job they did, but they're still building. They're not there yet. All right, listen, hey, don't forget, give me a thumbs up on this video. Share with your friends. Tomorrow, I'm breaking down the Green Bay Packers. So, hey, have a great night. I will see you tomorrow.